We all already know that this Indian American women diaspora, who has been very much acclaimed for her international popular selling fiction that she has been writing for so long, and many famous books that she has produced are The Mistress of Spices, published in 1997, Sister of My Heart, 1999, Queen of Dreams, 2004, One Amazing Thing, 2010, The Palace of Illusions, 2008, All India Girl, 2012, and Before We Visit the Goddess, that's the latest that she has written and published in 2016. So we can see that within 20 years of her writing, creative writing, she has produced all of, we may say, 10 books or 8 books. Now, what has made her into such kind of, limelight? The point is that she has given us 2 formulas. If we go into the theoretical books written by Daniel Klein, and it is the book title is Travel with Epicurus, and there is another book by Viktor Frankl, and it's The Search of Meaning. These are the very current theoretical writers, and they are giving to us 2 concepts. That one is that we have to have certain kind of meaningfulness, whatever we do. And Frank Victor says that we have to have some kind of existence, but that metaphysical existence is always going through some kind of whims and fancies or hues and cries are all around us, and that to be had to be fixed, and that to be had into certain kind of streamline of existence. Similarly, Daniel Klein, he talks about travel with Epicurus. Travel with Epicurus means that we have existence which always requires some kind of self-respect. Means we want respect for ourselves from others, and we want same within ourselves to look into through our eye lens, that is their dignity or not. So that dignity, how it has to be be originated in yourself, that is a main question. And this novelist, she's basically focusing on the dignity of existence and the meaningful existence. Now, as she is a women novelist, she also looks from the women point of view on these aspects. Now, her background, the family background or her homeland, that has been the major backdrop in bringing these aspects. Because in Indian philosophy, if we go into some kind of Sanatan philosophy or the way of living, there we naturally find that there's certain sort of coexistence, always a kind of a motive that requires to be cultivated in oneself. So that kind of philosophy that she had carried as a baggage in her mind, and that has been a backdrop in her novels. So here we see that she has given us certain key takeaways, that how to be if you are in alien land or in a promising land, a land of opportunities, how you have to acculture yourself, how you have to assimilate, adapt. You have to adapt means you have to have your own first insight, that how you can go change yourself. So insight is equal to change, and when there is a change, naturally you groom your inside feelings in such a way that you welcome others. So that is acculturation. So that gaze has to be changed. That gaze actually comes how? When we have the conscious and unconscious aspect, and that is very strongly working in our psyche. Now, when the conscious and unconscious principle, or you may say that kind of, system works in our personality, we go for double life or double standards, or you may say split personality or double consciousness. Now, double consciousness that she has very well brought in her female characters, and that she says that the all female characters somewhere representing personal as politics. And politics comes, of course, in certain kind of a gaze. And that gaze, if you get received from others and you send to others through your lens. And now your lens, as William Wordsworth said, it's a glimpse of your own, it's a mirror. You get what you are thinking and what others are thinking. So there the politics lies. But the politics has to be somewhere into be kind of a socialization. It has to have some kind of, get along or getting together with others. Otherwise, how will you live as a lowly figure or in a lonesome way? So when we go through this kind of process, or her characters in each of the novels, in whatever the circumstances, in whatever kind of scenario they are being groomed or they're being brought up, so somewhere they have that kind of self-discovery. Even though you will see that even a dyslexia student, if he is, he will discover himself. He will have his own gaze. And when he looks to that kind of environment through his lens, he certainly discovers himself. Similarly, every character, every body, every figure that configures something through the lens of oneself, and that lens modifies, it can give you some kind of capacity to understand, and then you float with your kind of thoughts towards others. Now, the point is that this author, he's trying to give you some kind of a formula that you have to have your some kind of expected dreams to be into certain kind of adjustment with the realities. Now, dreams can be with your body, dreams can be with your mind, dreams can be with your heart. There are three things, as Indian philosophy says. So body is always on the sexuality level. Body is always on the physicality. It's always all thinking about the physical well-being, physical ego, and then mind. Mind is always, always into the contemplative state, always in fixing the psychology into the sensibility and the sensibility, or you may say sensitiveness or the sensibility. So this kind of fixed conflict of interest keeps on going on. And there he says that if the personality or the persona has some kind of compassion, compassion, I would say that unless you develop for oneself the love for oneself, why in social media currently going on that you have to change your perception, you have to love yourself. So once you start loving yourself, but that should not be narcissism, that should not be nihilistic, that should not go into some kind of, violent kind of sadistic approach, but the love that really gives you cosmic kind of magical visualization of things. And here, when you have love, naturally you try to mellow down, you try to keep your temperament as per the likeness of others. So here there lies the new beginnings. Otherwise, even if we are in our homeland and transiting to another kind of land, or if we are in alien land, mixing with other kind of cultures, this kind of new beginning can never happen, whatever she has given us as takeaways. But it's in a general sense I'm talking about. But let's go into the depth, how she goes into this kind of because we are literature students, so naturally the literariness of the theories of literariness always comes in between to understand these writings. So her narrative technique and voice of the author. Postmodern fiction. Now, how it is a most modern fiction? Because most of the civilizations, they have been so advanced through whatever the ways of earning self-sufficiency, self-knowledge, and science and technology, that there is no such as issue of leverages, but the more there is issue of respect for yourself and to earn respect from others. This kind of dilemma is actually being dealt in the postmodern fiction. Number two, her novels also talk about some kind of human agency that always carries something through their lineage, through their legacy, through their backdrops, and through their backgrounds. Those human agencies are always looking into their ancestral lines or whatever the pedigrees. Now these human agencies can be one own self communicating with the other selves. So there's a two-way process. And in this two-way process, the language, thought, and action, they all work so in a kind of a pattern that you need kind of adaptive laws, coexistential laws, or you may say that some kind of a justice you have to make to settle for your own body, for your own psyche, and for others. Then she says that her narrative technique also tells and explores Indian epic female characters because she needed something which she can brought into the diaspora onto the diaspora platform, certain kind of culture through which her community people or her gender kind of people could relate to her. So she picked up the very old ancient scriptures, famous respected scriptures, and from that she picked up women, Draupadi especially, and she has been a figure of being questioned always because of her self-positioning in her journey of life, or realization of detachment, attachment, to avoid self-guilt from the expected grounds of reality. Now, how far Draupadi had felt somewhere? Did she feel self-guilt very at the end of the Mahabharat war, or did she have this kind of realization in the very beginning? So this kind of questions, self-probing questions, has been generated by the author from the expected grounds of reality or prevailing notions, myths, etc. In a way, the female protagonist inner realm revisualizes how past agencies of tradition, myth, constructs, and concepts are very important. So now, in a world of multicultural lifestyle, where this women author has been existing and still till date she is there, she has, in a general way, somewhere kept in mind not only her ethnicity, but she has also visited into the minds of other multicultural people who also face the same kind of gaps or miscommunication or disinformation kind of things to have a settled and assimilated life. So her narrative technique also relates to post-structural work of fiction, in which general possibility in work of art by way of cultural and generic verisimilitude. Here, what I mean by cultural and generic verisimilitude is that her fictional universe alternates reality into a work of art indeed, but she keeps her characters within normative structured bounds. Means cultural verisimilitude she maintains in each of her novel into these kind of a structured limitations of the societal attributes. And generic here, I mean that the author looks into the concept of sexuality, which is, of course, decides the biological phenomena of a certain gender. And it is some way very important to understand others and to go in certain kind of relationship between two individuals that manifest not only one's self-image, but also tries to go beyond boundaries with that same kind of the body that one has been gifted with. So that self-imaging is very important, and that's a generic verisimilitude one has to be into which is very important in creating apprehension, illusion sometimes, even sometimes internal logics go wayward with regard to confusion, that because generally what we impose upon ourselves that I belong to this gender, but this gender is not that important. What important is that how biologically that gender has strengthened the inner constitution, that inner constitution, that inner balance. If sexually or biologically being strengthened, the gender phenomena is no more important, it's mitigated. So these aspects she has brought into her writings, And the plot in the novels turns up dialogic in screening dilemma and in tracing complexity around the set frameworks of the past that have been shaping the imagined perspectives on the basis of historical formulations for ages. Now she has relocated in her novels Feminism to understand how fragility, dependency are the inbuilt structures. They are natural structures. Why they are natural? Because the right from her birth, she has been somewhere into some kind of environment. There's, she's been, being told, or she's been made to imagine that this kind of structure she has to live in. The construction that has been there around her always. And women are the inherent part of that social cultural phenomena. The author problematizes the outside within in the Olinda girl. Now, Olinda girl here is Karobi, and Karobi is into some kind of trouble. Why? Because she comes to realize that somewhere she is not that legitimate child, although she has never been made aware of that kind of you may say lopsided issue of being an orphan, or you may say an illegitimate one, or being from an unwed mother. This kind of struggle that she goes inside herself when she just about to get engaged to her friend Rajat. So there the main struggle is that how that woman now relocates her own image, which may be in contradiction, or which may be in revelation, or in the society. Secondly, the collective affirmance with regard to acceptable attributes that in general stereotypical sense constructs their periphery, the psychology, the paradigm to their anticipated performing images. Last but the least, their route to build roadmap for this self-actualization, that is Mistress of Spices. Everybody has watched that movie, famous, acclaimed movie by the in which the performance enacted by the lead actress Aishwarya Rai. Now, Aishwarya Rai herself has been an epitome of that kind of self-actualization in her life, and if she has been acting into that film, it adds more value to that film. And the writer who is writing this novel, again, that fellow is again into that kind of self-actualization process, who has countered all kind of boundaries that she might have faced as an Indian diaspora. So here that Mistress of Spices is a very good example to break away self-precarity. Means you need not to have some kind of, you want sovereignty, but you cannot live in passivity. As Simone Bauer says, that if you want to live in sovereignty, you cannot live in passivity. You have to break your own, walls or blockages to come out, to adjust, and to rethink how it can be done. So genealogy here, but point is that the Queen of Dreams, where Rakhi, who's been, somewhere obstructed in her progress because of certain, traditional factors that come into her life, because she had been always disturbed, not looked after so well as she should be. Her spatial freedom had always been, disturbed because of certain baggage, or certain problems, or certain kind of, alienation she felt because her mother could not look after her. Her mother had been a dreamer. Dreamer means she could heal many of the people problems, but inside her own house, she was an alien figure. She could not, she didn't have that space, the time, a free time to look after her own family members. And somewhere there, why that happened? Were there any material issues, or were there any familial problems, or were there some other psychological issues? So here, these issues have been brought and questioning the meaningful existence of the mother and the daughter in the novel. So next is here I just want to then this how feminism of the author consistent to femaleness rather to fragility. Feminine longings and challenges are instrumental to their self-exploration of their needs, desires, and ambitions. So first is one has to have certain dreams. One has to have certain expectations from oneself. And if one have that kind of one has that kind of expectation or longings, so naturally the self is always ready to face the challenges. So it's an instrumental to their self-exploration of their needs, desires, and ambitions. Then secondly, a self-conflict and its realization changes their thought process to realize their goals as women in the society or family. Indeed, see, even if we, I should not digress, but suppose if we are going for some kind of intervention or innovation in our life, for any kind of petty thing that we want to have for development, there will be some kind of conflict. And first conflict arises from one's own self, that should it be followed or not. And once then their self conflict is being countered, thought process is there, and the realization for goals also start heading. That existential anguish strengthens one's determination, choices, and actions. Now here, I would like to point out Jean-Paul Sartre's Existential in Humanism. What he says that one needs to have certain kind of existential anguish and choices to go ahead. But one has to understand that where the evil of sentimentality, where the evil of sensitiveness can, impose upon you certain kind of depression, certain kind of escapism, certain kind of absurdity, that has to be countered. Otherwise, you're being honest to your anguish, being honest to your dreams, can lead you to certain kind of maladjustment. A malignity can occur in your personality. That needs to be taken care of. Otherwise, all dreams will go into a shattered, deplorable state. So like all women in general, they too feel vulnerable, handicapped in pursuit of their dreams, yet their focus and bent of mind drive their spirit and guts. So most of the characters that has been drawn by the author Chitra Divakaruni Banerjee, these characters somewhere driven by their spirit and guts. Their sense of dependency is the actual crux of their vulnerability. But even though they have spirit and guts, still they are dependent. And that is the cause of their vulnerability, which the author wants to point out, so they get so desired purpose of their life. Now, protagonists struggle against anticipated realities and solutions. The first is the Palace of Illusions. Panchali is in a crisis right from her beginning to the end of the epic Mahabharata had been that she has her own expected illusions of self-worth. The day she emerged from the fire, her brother also emerged, Drishtadyumna. But there's some question she get in her mind of her self-worth. Then regarding her education, then to her when she was grown up to get married, the Swayamvar has to be held. Every time, even then being shared as a wife, then going into the war, or before war, what her state of mind, how she had to face the cynicism of whatever the family, ancestral family that she had there around her. So means somewhere she had been into a state of, self-existential crisis, questioning her worth. And yet the reality that she faces nothing more than as an object to be shared, exchanged, or to be deprived. So she couldn't get out of her own thoughts and execute them that could balance her inside and outside realm. Divakaruni associates in her novel Sister of My Heart a dependent suppressed woman with a fugitive kind of trap, and whose thirst for freedom let a person fight the sorrows. The expectations of sisterhood are contrasted with the entity of womanhood. So here are the two characters, Anju and Sudha, who are very much the lead protagonist, and their storyline are the crux of the plot. Then Divakaruni in the Wine of Desire novel also discusses how a male perceives female in his self-created various illusions. For example, here Sudha, as it is a sequel of the novel Sister of My Heart. So here the Sudha is invited to California by her far distant sister. Actually, they are not real, they are not even cousins, but somewhere they've been so closely related that they're far distant sisters, that she's been invited to California by Anju because Anju had been facing some kind of crisis, trauma because of miscarriage of a pregnancy. And as they have been from childhood together as sisters, many of the critics have targeted that kind of relationship not as a sisterhood but some kind of lesbian, homosexual, homo kind of interaction that they had into their relationship. So here Divakaruni actually very in a scrutiny way bringing another kind of gaze towards that sisterhood, and that Anju's husband Sunil, how his gaze is looking into that sisterhood. So perhaps he's thinking that Sudha is finding some kind of escape into taking a refuge with Anju, and that is objectionable for Sunil because for him, she's still a dependent figure and she can be manipulated. So here I have added one, short film video here for you all. You can all watch if you can, because it's very interesting. It's so engrossing. So, you just chill your heart and mind that how a woman, even belonging to, blue blood legacy, faces such kind of crisis. And that's why when the superior, as a tragedy of a common man written by Arthur Miller, when we read that theory of Arthur Miller in the Tragedy of a Common Man, we find that how that contrast superior blood figures used to have when they were living in their life in their royal containment zones. So I think the sound is not audible of this video. Perhaps to many this sound will create problems. So I think the organizers have just given you a silent visual of the whole video. So here we see such a beautiful and rapturous beauty with all kind of richness adorned, and in her whatever family lineage she has been with, and but you can see the glance in her eyes. That glance in her eyes is somewhere not showing her satiety. She's not into contentment. So expressive the eyes here are. And why if we say this montage in this film video, that she's looking from down to up, again and again this is being focused, because one's self always go into some kind of self meditation to certain thought, and that thoughts keep probing inside your mind, your psyche, and your realm wants to say something but it's being restricted into certain constraints. And finally, because you are somewhere aggressive, you want to assert your aggressiveness, but the only eyes can express that. No, but not the mouth. You have to be voiceless. And she faced the punishment because she voiced her intentions. And voicing her intention was not appreciated 5,000 years ago into certain kind of civilization until date, as we have seen for 2 days or whatever the papers we have been listening to. The moment the voice is there, the voice of protest is there, you can see how the heinous human civilization caused some kind of infliction, trauma, and then there you will find that you're always because now you're looking for some kind of support. In those times, there were only support was the faith, the God. Even if we today go into the war zones, battle zones, what is there? There's only faith and the God. The inner smile, the hope is there. What Matthew Arnold says in Dover Beach, only that love for yourself is there as a hope. And that is the end of this kind of Panchali. There was tragic end. She lost everything because she tried to voice her self-worth. So someday she realized that her resistance, condemnation of others, her kind of, vengeance that she was building in herself towards society, towards norms, towards structures, towards people, that all based on the other's gaze towards her, and her inability to go beyond excess notions, and her vindictiveness depends on a weak self, her public and private space lack integration. Then authors' perception towards women as a body or as an agency in question here, the author brings to the global forum the specters of sentimentality of a woman, besides recentering Orient's culture in the metropolitan culture of diaspora. This historical projection construes a positional structure of post-colonialist. I'll just wind up if you want, because it's a long, there are 6 novels. I can, of course, discuss. I have only 1 or 2 novels here. This historical projection constitutes a positional structure of post-colonialist and post-nationalist narrative to understand defense guards of women for her mental survival and determines their hope in their life. The physical and cultural contestation of a woman by a women author theorizes the dynamics of historical processes on one hand. Historical processes means that there are always some kind of myths that being always into narrative structure or into some kind of dialogue form in conversational patterns in the families, which some way, imbibe some kind of cultural ethics or values, and that has to be first, to be instilled by the women characters, by the women figures in the society. So it provides readers and critics to engage with historically subjugated section of human societies across the globe in context of national representation. It expresses deficit in terms of education, human progress, and humanitarian interest. Now, did Draupadi not get the education? Yeah, she got all sorts of education. Did Draupadi did not get any opportunity to progress? No, yeah, she learned all sorts of, what you say, weaponry education, how to fight in war, how to save oneself. She had all sorts of defensive knowledge. But what happened ultimately? She was left alone because all that knowledge of self-defense was only given in case of emergency. She can use that, but not to voice her protest within the structured, normative structure of the family or of the society. So here, this kind of, contrast we see in the value that is being imparted to genders, particular genders. The novel's protagonists' metaphysical contradictions with regard to their understanding of their entity and essence led them into some sort of illusionary or makeshift arrangements to fall in the path of self-existence and self-sufficiency, which caused their incapacitated pathways and eyesore to the male world, where their actual womanhood or essence need to be belonged. So here we see that how these women characters in the novel, especially Sister of My Heart, Wine of Desire, and Palace of Illusion, they are being projected by the author herself as the not as the fallen characters, but the characters that had some kind of tragic flaw, or you may say hamartia, that led them to